has ever asked me this, but if they did, here is what I would say. The top 3 things that I missed the most about Los Angeles. Number 3, roast chicken in Hollywood. I haven't been able to find shawarma like this since, anywhere. This is by far the best chicken shawarma in the world. Hands down, best in the world. Number 2, Bordner's. I don't drink much these days, and you'll rarely see me at a bar. But if Bordner's was still across the street from my office, then I'd be there every night. Bordner's was a wild scene. And by wild, it was old Hollywood, and I loved it. They had different movies playing on the TV with no sound. The drinks were great. Bordner's was amazing. If you're ever in Hollywood, shuffle on down to Cherokee and Hollywood Boulevard and check out Bordner's. And last, but certainly not least, the number one thing I miss the most about Los Angeles is my old friend Dylan Stern. But we're only about a minute into this podcast, and I'm not really ready to go down that road yet. So let's just say, Dylan, if you're listening, we hope you're well. A hole-in-the-wall shawarma restaurant, a bar, and a friend whom I lost in the divorce. Not bad for a guy who spent 16 years living in the City of Angels, or as I like to call it, the City of Lunatics, or the City of Muppets. God, I loved it there. And I miss it every day. But it was my past, and that was fun. It was so much fun. I mean, so much fun I had to actually 86 myself and move back east a couple years ago for a fresh start. But those stories are for another time and another episode. Right now, we're talking about Los Angeles. And the thing about Los Angeles is this. It's a place where the dreamers and unwanted go. Which, when you think about it, in America these days, those are about one and the same. I spent 16 years living in LA, and luckily none of that time was spent homeless on the streets. I worked in the entertainment industry as an actor and a television producer. Most of my acting work revolved around Jonah Hill, and if you want to learn more about that, you can listen to my award-winning podcast, My Life as a Celebrity Lookalike, available wherever you listen to podcasts. As for the television producer part, I mostly worked in reality TV with the occasional documentary thrown my way. Sure, I did a lot of my own independent projects, but most of the time I was spent working for someone else, producing some type of crappy reality show. But as a mentor once said, we make a lot of crap, but we got to pay the bills. That was a line that really resonated with me in my 20s and in my early 30s. We make a lot of crap, but we got to pay the bills. That was said by Randy Barbado, one of the co-founders of World of Wonder, who ended up creating RuPaul's Drag Race and several other fantastic reality television series. Randy said this to me when we were on set in New York City, actually. We were getting ready to interview AJ Jacobs for an Esquire documentary. And AJ said, "Oh, World of Wonder. I love what you guys do. You do a lot of stuff, a lot of great stuff." And Fenton, being the modest British man he is, responded with, "Oh, thank you. Thank you very much." And then Randy screams, "Well, we make a lot of crap, but we got to pay the bills." And that was it. That was the line that made me realize what it all meant. No line struck me while coming up in Los Angeles like this line did. It put everything I was doing in my 20s and into my 30s into perspective. Not every gig is a good one, and not every project is a home run, but they all lead somewhere. In my case, it led to great success, followed by a complete implosion, but we'll save that for the Pittsburgh episode of this podcast. LA was great. You never knew what you were going to see, and you never knew who you were going to meet. One morning, I was driving to my office in Hollywood. I turned right onto Selma to go towards the back parking lot, and when I made the right turn, I saw a giant naked woman walking down the street, like some kind of mirage. She was completely naked, and when I say giant, she wasn't like Godzilla. She was just, bigger. Anyway, she had blonde hair, upstairs and down, and she was stark naked. Honestly, she looked a lot like Kevin Green. Just another morning in Hollywood. But why was this lady naked? Why was she walking down the street? I will never know, but I got to experience it, and it was wild. Once Uber and Lyft showed up in LA, everything changed. Before that, getting around usually meant driving and drinking and drinking and driving. I was pretty reckless in my 20s and my 30s, and I'm lucky to make it through all those years in Los Angeles. LA can be a very wild place. One time, my Uber driver, who, speaking of the Muppets, looked quite a bit like Miss Piggy, actually offered me, let's just say, something extra for cash only. My response? Well, if we do that, who's going to drive the car? Like I said, LA is a crazy town, and I loved it a little too much. That was a quick rundown of my time in Los Angeles. Like I said, I was there for almost 20 years, and I experienced quite a bit of chaos. Most of it I implemented myself. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little about some of the celebrities I met and worked with while in LA, and then we're going to have a guest pop on later and talk about their time in LA. So stick around. Just Steve is just getting started.
Are you troubled by strange noises in the middle of the night?
Do you experience feelings of dread in your basement or attic?
Have you or any of your family ever seen a spook, specter, or ghost?
If the answer is yes, then don't wait another minute. Pick up your phone and call the professionals. Go, Ghostbusters! Our courteous and efficient staff is on call 24 hours a day to serve all your supernatural elimination needs.
We're ready to believe you!
Hey, welcome back to Just Steve. I'm just a dumbass is what I am. I'm actually making sure I'm plugged in this time. I wasn't... Hold on, I still got to check this. Oh, what is going on? Do I not have the right microphone up again? Hello.
Hey, how's that? Is that better? That's probably much better. Yeah, I'm an idiot. So anyway, I did the whole cold open without the microphone plugged in. And I guess that's what you get for doing it at 7:30 in the morning without coffee, which I don't really drink that much of. So now you can hear the difference. The microphone is working. So I probably lost hundreds of thousands of listeners just from that poor audio that we had for the first 6 or 7 minutes. But screw them. We don't need them because we're not here for them. We're here just to have some fun. And if you're with us, you're with us. And if you're not, you're not. This is Just Steve. We're going to start talking about some celebrities and continue our Los Angeles stories. Hey, welcome back to Just Steve. I am your host, Just Steve, and we were just talking a little bit about Los Angeles and my time there. I was in LA for 16 years, and over those 16 years, I met a lot of different celebrities, mostly through work, but sometimes it was through random run-ins or through people or different things. Like I said when we were talking earlier, you never really know what's going to happen in a town like Los Angeles. So I ended up going through and I put together the list of celebrities that I have met or worked with or had some type of interaction with, and it ended up being 40 of them. And thanks to the help of ChatGPT, I was able to put them in order of the most famous and the least famous. So 1 being the most famous and 40 being the least famous. So I thought I'd just walk through these quickly, or at least try to go through them quickly, and talk about what each interaction was and how I know this person, or if I worked with them, or what it was. So let's do it. Number 40. Here we go. Drum roll, please. All right. Number 40 is my main man, Dan Byrne. Hey, Dan, if you're listening to this podcast, I don't consider us friends, but I would love to be your friend. Every time I saw Dan at one of his shows, whether it's here in Pittsburgh or in Los Angeles, I always felt compelled to talk to him, especially after 2020 when I had him play at my Zoom COVID birthday party. That's right. I paid Dan Byrne a couple $100, $500 actually. Let's not shortchange it. I paid Dan Byrne $500,000, if that's a word, to play my birthday party on Zoom, and it was really fun. Dan's a great singer-songwriter. He's done a lot of music for television and film, including some music for the movie Walk Hard, which is an incredible film, as well as the Amazon series Stinky and Dirty. And I felt from getting to know Dan from that Zoom and then meeting him several times after that at shows, I felt like we were buddies, but we weren't. So Dan, if you're listening, I appreciate you. I love your music. You called me Simsy once, and it meant a lot. So number 40, sorry, you are the least popular person I've met on my list, but number 40, Dan Byrne. Number 39, High Pitch Eric. Man, Dan Byrne, if you are listening, that sucks. But High Pitch Eric, a Howard Stern whackpacker. I actually had to look up to see if he was still alive, and he is, shockingly. Him and Artie Lang have just blown everyone's mind with outliving everyone. But anyway, High Pitch Eric, number 39, met him at a Dave & Buster's. He was with the late Joey Boots. I bought him I bought High Pitch Eric like potato skins or something to eat. That was like what you did. Like you went to Dave & Buster's. It wasn't an official meet and greet. You hung out with High Pitch Eric and then you buy him potato skins. and it was wild. All right, number 38, Pat Sanson. Pat Sanson is one of the guitarists in Wilco. I didn't really meet Pat as more as I just gave him my chair when I was seeing Wilco at the Ace Hotel in Los Angeles. Pat needed somewhere to sit. I was getting up with my friend. We were leaving, so I went over to Pat, said, "You could have my seat." And then he went on and played a killer show, as he always does. Number 37. Oh, fuckface Rob Schneider. Yeah, Rob Schneider, real asshole. A lot of people in the industry and in Hollywood don't like Rob Schneider. I I've been saying for years that I hate Rob Schneider, and I had this running joke where it was R.I.P. Rob Schneider, and you would post it on social media, and people thought he was dead. That was easier to do like 10, 15 years ago before like you had like Gemini and ChatGPT and ways to check things quickly. But I never really liked Rob Schneider because when I worked on Funny People as Jonah Hill stand-in, again, if you want to hear that story, you can listen to my podcast, My Life as a Celebrity Lookalike. That's with myself and my good buddy Josh. We do that podcast together in 2021, and it talks about me looking like Jonah Hill and working with Jonah. Anyway, if you want to hear that, go check that out. But I was working on Funny People, and Adam Sandler was obviously in the movie, and he was on set, and Schneider was with him, walking around looking all smug and bullshit face like, and I don't even know what that means, but I don't know. Sandler came up and said hi to me because we met a couple of days or weeks earlier. I can't remember, and I don't know. Schneider was probably just confused because he probably thought I was Jonah Hill, but he really, I don't know. He kind of like snubbed me a little bit, gave me a dirty look. But fuck him, 37, Rob Schneider. Look at that, 37. He's two below high pitch Eric. All right, number 36 is actually a person I did get to befriend, Daniel Francesi. He played Damien in Mean Girls. He was also in a TV series on HBO, and he worked with him a bunch at World of Wonder. Super nice guy. Met him many times. He actually helped me get into acting, 15, 20 years ago when I looked like Jonah Hill. And I will always thank Danny for that. And I hope he's doing well. Number 35, my VJ, my MTV VJ, Dave Holmes. Yeah, Dave Holmes, man. I actually, to be completely honest, I kind of was Dave Holmes' boss by the time I left Hollywood. He did a lot with us with his podcast, Homophilia. I don't know if it's still out there, but he did that with his podcast partner, Matt. And they did DragCon a lot, and I was writing and producing stuff for DragCon, and I was the programming producer. So we would bring Homophilia on, and then when I started the World of Wonder podcast network, we brought in Homophilia as one of our podcasts. And so technically, I guess I was Dave Holmes' boss. I didn't really sign the checks, but I made sure they got submitted. So there you go. My VJ. Sorry, Jesse Camp. Number 34, Willie Geist. Willie Geist is great because I see him in the mornings whenever my girlfriend is watching the Today Show, which I believe is what he's on. If he's not, I apologize for that. But Willie Geist was just, he was coming up, and we interviewed him for an Esquire documentary, the same one I was referencing earlier in the show. And nice guy, Willie Geist. 33, David Wayne. I think he should be higher on this list. He's not. David Wayne is an awesome director and just a great human. I was in a David Wayne movie that he directed called A Futile and Stupid Gesture, and it was about the life of Doug Kenny, and I got to play Flounder from Animal House, also known as Stephen First, the actor's name, the late Stephen First. And David Wayne was so cool. He was a great director to watch and someone to like learn from. But I also remember going to the rap party and him coming up to me and being like, Flounder, and showing me on the iPad the scene that is in the movie. And it's a very split second that I'm in the movie, at least the featured scene, but it's pretty cool. And it was pretty cool that David Wayne, someone that I look up to as a director and a comedy writer, and a man of great talents, got to show me the scene that he directed. So that was cool. Number 32, David Wayne's good friend, Joe LaTorrigo. Joe was in the movie. He was cool. Talked to him after lunch once. Number 31, Dante Basco. That is Rufio. Rufio. He came to DragCon. We were doing an event at DragCon that involved some different celebrities, and he happened to be there. And I got a picture with him, and he was super nice. And Rufio. Number 30, asshole Brian Callen. Just going to leave it at that. Worked with him on a movie. He's a piece of shit. Number 29, Josh Radnor. Josh Radnor from How I Met Your Mother. I said probably the corniest thing to Josh Radnor. It was like my first year in LA. I was going to actually Daniel Francese's art gallery, and Josh and Danny were friends. And I saw Josh getting out of his car in the parking lot. And I said, "Oh, hey, man, I love you and How I Met Your Mother. You're really great, blah, blah, blah. You should do movies." Like, what the hell? I was giving Josh Radnor advice. Anyway, it turned out he ended up directing movies. And, he had his career, and that's how it should be. All right, who's next? Josh Radnor. Number 28, Ross Matthews. Ross the intern, as some know him. I don't know Ross from Jay Leno. I don't know Ross from even Chelsea. I know Ross from RuPaul's Drag Race and DragCon. And Ross was a delight to work with every time I worked with him. Wonderful person, and I hope he's doing well. Number 27, my very good friend Mario Lopez. I used to receive a Christmas card from Mario Lopez. I don't anymore because I've moved several times since, and I never sent him one. But Mario Lopez, I worked on his wedding fiesta. That is such a wild story and situation that I hated so much at the time that I will have to probably make a whole episode about that. So Mario Lopez, number 27, just wild. Number 26, meeting, more of like a quick hello, maybe a handshake. Emmy Rossum from Shameless. She was in A Futile and Stupid Gesture, the movie that David Wayne directed. She was very kind and sweet. Number 25, this is the first one on the list, and there's only two that is no longer with us. May he rest in peace. The late, great George Wendt. I met George Wendt at LAX. I was actually traveling somewhere, and I was going through security. And LAX has so many different security lines and ways to get in. And I don't really know where we were, but George Wendt was there, and he was in a wheelchair. He was being helped through security. He had a hole in his sock. Felt bad about that. And I went up to him and I said some corny shit like, you being in Cheers and being a comedy actor really changed who I was as a person of comedy and writing and television and blah, blah, blah. And he just said thanks and walked away with his hole in his sock. Another one that also happened at LAX that very well could have been like the same trip, but I have traveled a lot, so could have been a different time. But I remember was Christina Hendricks. She's number 24. Christina Hendricks, who played Joan in Mad Men. She was sitting at a bar at LAX, and I just walked up to the bar, sat down like I normally did back then, and I ordered a drink, and I looked at her and I said hello, and she just was served a glass of wine. She pushed the glass of wine away, grabbed her bag, signed a check, and walked away. And that was that. And that was how I met Christina Hendricks. Number 23, Michelle Visage. Again, I know Michelle Visage through RuPaul and RuPaul's Drag Race, but I also worked on a show with Michelle called How's Your Head, Hun? And we did that during the pandemic, and that was a really fun time. Michelle's husband's a really great guy, and her family's really wonderful. And even though we were all working from a distance making this television show, it was really fun. So check that out. It was on like BBC 3 or something. So maybe you can't check it out. I don't know. Number 22, Carson Kressley, also RuPaul's Drag Race, World of Wonder, DragCon. Nice guy. I know a couple people said he wasn't nice, but I never had a problem with him. So Carson, very nice dresser. Number 21, my man, Kevin Smith. That was a dream come true. I was walking into my office at the World of Wonder building, and Kevin Smith was walking out. He was actually looking at a bunch of photos that are in the lobby of the World of Wonder building, and he was asking about David Keeps, who was in the one photo, and David Keeps's photo had a pencil in his mouth, and he's like, "Who is this guy?" And I'm like, "Holy shit!" And I was so like starstruck. I was like, "Silent Bob!" I just totally went fanboy. And he's like, "Who is this guy?" And I was like, "Oh, that's David Keeps." Blah blah blah. And then anyway, me and Kevin Smith took a picture, and that was when he told me about Jay and Silent Bob, the reboot, and I thought it was crazy, and I'm like, why is he doing that? And I'm glad he did it, and I just want him to keep making movies, good or bad, funny or not, just make movies, man. You're the best. Number 21, Kevin Smith. Number 20, Charo. You know who I'm talking about. And still alive, Coochie Coochie Charo. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. One of my first jobs when I was working at World of Wonder was assistant. I was just working on a desk, and World of Wonder put in a green screen studio, so to speak, in the basement of their building. And Charo was the very first person to film on this green screen, and she brought a baby bull in and had to bring it down the elevator, and I was in charge of that. So I got to meet Charo, Coochie, baby bull. It was pretty wild. Number 19 on the list, Nicole Richie. I worked with Nicole for 4 seasons, actually 2 seasons of her show on AOL and 2 seasons of her show on VH1, the Candlely Nicole show. Nicole's super fun. I would see her different places around town after the show ended, and I would always say hi to her. And I drove her car once. She was driving down the road once. She beeped and screamed at me. She's just really cool, and I really enjoyed working with her. So number 19, Nicole Richie. Number 18, going back to the movie A Futile and Stupid Gesture, is Will Forte. I got to work with Will Forte, and that was really cool. Didn't get to do a scene with him, but was in the movie with him and got to talk with him and Joe Latorigo after lunch, which was a really cool experience when I was doing the movie A Futile and Stupid Gesture in 2016. Number 17, Ernie Hudson. I had the privilege of meeting Ernie Hudson on a job that I worked on early in my career. We were doing an interview for him at his alma mater, Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. Number 16, Cuba Gooding Jr. This might very well could be a whole spin-off episode, but I met Cuba at a hala truck in New York City, and it's just wild. I let's just save the Cuba story, but yeah, I met Cuba, and he insisted that we took a picture together. We took a picture together. He bought me lamb over rice. He was very kind. He left, and then the next day in the tabloids, or not even the tabloids, I guess just in the press, it was Cuba Gooding Jr. Sexually assaulted some woman at a club in Manhattan. And I'm like, what? I wasn't at the club, but I was the guy buying or accepting the lamb over rice that he bought me. Anyway, crazy situation, but I was there with Cuba after he, I guess, copped a feel or did something worse. So, anyway, just what's his name? Brian Callen. Fuck you, Cuba. Number 15, Aziz Ansari. Worked with Aziz. That's another one who, I guess got me too'd, but I worked with him on Funny People. Number 14, Joe Namath. God, this must be the row of men that just assaulted women. I mean, Joe Namath made out with a reporter on ESPN. Anyway, let's number 14, Joe Namath. Got to do an interview with him. Number 13, incredible guy. As far as I know, never assaulted anyone. Mike Rowe. Everyone loves Mike Rowe. I got to work with him on a show called Returning the Favor, which was part of the Facebook Watch package of TV shows, which I don't think went very far, but Mike was an incredible guy to work with, and we're going to do a whole episode about working with Mike at some point. Number 12, Andy Cohen. Andy Cohen was really cool to meet. I was a big Howard Stern fan back in the day, and Andy Cohen was always on the show, always talking with Stern, and it was around the time when he was doing the cello. And Andy Cohen was at World of Wonder, the offices I was based out of for most of my career. And he was leaving Randy and Fenton's office, and he walked out, and I said, cello. And he goes, did you just say cello? And then he looked at me and my buddy Travis, and we both had Pittsburgh Pirate hats on, and Andy's is a Cardinals fan. And he goes, what the hell? Do Randy and Fenton only hire Pirates fans? And we laughed, and that was fun. That was a good way to meet Andy. I worked with him a couple times after that, but that was the best one. Number 11, Judd Apatow. Got to meet Judd Apatow when I worked on Funny People, and that was it. He was my boss. And then that ended. Again, if you want to hear more about that story, go to the My Life as a Celebrity Lookalike podcast, which you can listen to anywhere where podcasts are available. Number 10, this is the second person who is no longer with us, Peter Bondanovich. Peter Bondanovich was someone that Randy and Fenton were interviewing when we did the Esquire documentary, just like Joe Namath, and just like I was talking about earlier with AJ Jacobs and Willie Geist. So I got to meet Peter Bondanovich. At the time, I was still a little naive to that world of Hollywood directors, and I just kind of knew Peter Bondanovich as Jennifer Melfi's therapist in The Sopranos. So I felt a little stupid once I started listening back to the interview and figuring out, oh, this guy's top tier. So that was pretty cool. Number 9, Harvey Keitel. This goes a lot with my number 2, which we'll get to in a minute. So we're going to hold that. We'll hold Harvey Keitel for number 2. Number 8, Jonah Hill. Of course, I met Jonah Hill. I've worked with him many times. Haven't seen or spoke to him in almost 20 years, but I don't think he liked me very much. But, good actor, had a good career. Good luck. I think he pissed off some women too. These guys, man, I don't know what their problem is. Number 7, Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen was pretty cool. Worked with him on Funny People as well. When I say worked with these guys, I just kind of walked by them as they were going to the set and from their trailers. I was sitting in a lawn chair next to craft services waiting for them to tell me to get on stage. Anyway, like I said, if you want to hear more about that, My Life as a Celebrity Lookalike, which is a podcast that's available on YouTube and everywhere podcasts are available. Number 6 is Nancy Cartwright. My ex-wife worked with Nancy Cartwright for a while, so we had dinner with her. It was really cool because she actually said my name in Bart Simpson's voice, and it was wild. So I just kind of chalked that up to Bart Simpson. Number 5, Jack Black. I worked with Jack Black when I was a production assistant in Los Angeles in 2008. My friend Dylan hired me to be a PA, and the boom operator didn't show up. They had a sound mixer, someone working the board, but they didn't have a boom operator. So Dylan, knowing that I knew a little bit about anything outside being a PA and anything outside of stocking a cooler with ice, he gave me the job as the boom op, and I got to boom Jack Black on a Nickelodeon Kids Choice Awards promo, and it was really cool, man. And I remember I made him laugh because I said something. They said something, we don't need sound, and it was like they were rolling on the slime, and I was like, I don't know what I said, but he laughed, and I'm sure it was great. I'm sure he never thought of it again. Number 4 on the celebrities that I have worked with or have had some type of engagement with is RuPaul, and we will have a whole episode about RuPaul, like Mike Rowe and a few of the others on this list. I've had a really strong working relationship with RuPaul, and I look forward to sharing stories about my time with Ru in his dressing room. That sounds weird, but just being around Ru before he would go out and do performances, and it was really great to be around someone like that. And I've only, in all the years I worked with RuPaul, which was probably close to 15, I only was around him once when he was in drag, and it was the first time I worked with him, so that's pretty wild. Number 3, Adam Sandler, the Sandman. Funny People, got to meet Adam Sandler, got to work with Adam Sandler. When I was on set, I met Sandler, and again, this is a story that is definitely worth telling, even though you should go listen to the other podcast to hear this story. But Adam walked out of the house they were filming in Malibu. I was there. They were just looking at me to see if I'd be a good fit for the Jonah Hill stand-in, and of course I was. And Adam walks out and he sees me. And at the time, no one really knew who Jonah Hill was. And he goes, "Oh, wow, you do look like the guy." And I said, "Oh, and you look like Adam." And we had a little shtick, and it went from there. And it was really fun and wild. And, well, again, like Jack Black, I'm sure he immediately forgot it, but I've remembered it forever. Number 2, celebrity I met. This isn't someone I worked with, but I would love to work with him if there's ever an opportunity again, is Quentin Tarantino. Him and number 9, Harvey Keitel, were having I guess like a 4th of July meal, or not. It wasn't even a meal. They were just hanging out at a patio in Venice at a beach house. And I think it was Harvey Keitel's beach house, because Tarantino, I was with a friend and we saw him. We said, "Yo, Tarantino, hey, happy 4th of July." And he's like, hey, you got any sausage? And I'm like, "What the hell?" And he's like, "This guy," and he points to Harvey Keitel, who's just smiling and like bobbing his head. He goes, this guy doesn't have any sausage. There's no sausage for the holiday." And I should have went to like Vaughn's and bought him sausage, because my whole life could have been different, but I didn't. And here I am. And then the number 1 celebrity that I actually worked with, and one time touched her finger when I was picking up her lav mic from her. That was Britney Spears. Lovely lady. Got to work very closely with her and her dad and her boys when they were young. This was around 2013 on a documentary we did for E! And Britney was very sweet, and I have nothing but wonderful things to say about her. So there it is, my list of 40 celebrities. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we got a special guest to talk about his 40 celebrities and his experience in Los Angeles. This is Just Steve. See you soon.
I had a good job until my boss accused me of stealing. I better call Saul.
I was out partying, minding my own business.
You are under arrest.
I'd better call Saul.
Hi, I'm Saul Goodman. Did you know that you have rights? The Constitution says you do, and so do I. I believe that until proven guilty, every man, woman, and child in this country is innocent. And that's why I fight for you, Albuquerque.
Better call Saul. Saul Goodman, attorney at law.
And welcome back to Just Steve. I am your host, Just Steve, and I am here with a new friend who I have met here in Pittsburgh, a new friend who has spent many, many, many years in the crazy Muppetville called Los Angeles. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to who I'm calling Hollywood Joe. How's it going, Hollywood Joe?
Good. Thanks, Steve. That's the first time anyone's called me that, so it's always good to have a new nickname in life.
At some point, has anyone ever screamed at you, like at a party, "Yo, Hollywood!" Or like you came back to visit from LA and they're like, "Hey, there's my man Hollywood Joe." I feel like that always happened to me.
I feel like I resisted in every fiber of my being to not make living in Los Angeles a part of my identity and personality, right? Like I felt like that was my perception of anybody from Los Angeles is it within like 5 seconds of meeting this person, they're telling you that they live in Los Angeles. And I just always hated that. So I very much, you know, stayed low key about my whereabouts if I was ever outside of LA. And I certainly don't come off as an Angeleno, so I don't think people would guess it. So no, this is the first time I've had the nickname Hollywood Joe, and glad that it's broadcasted. And this is it for me.
But I love that you didn't really own living in LA, where I was the complete opposite. Like I was on the road so much for work in the 16 years that I was there that every chance I got to tell someone I was from LA and that I was actually successful in LA, I was so obsessed with it. And then also the fact that the second I showed up in LA in 2007, I was a dead ringer for Jonah Hill, who just came out of like the gate himself. So it was like this, I felt like it was like this, like my rite of passage to be like, this is me. And people really were, and I talk about this in my other podcast, My Life as a Celebrity Lookalike, people thought I was in Superbad. And even though it came out 4 months after I moved to LA, like no one has the concept of it takes a year or two to make a movie. So they're like, oh, you moved to LA in January of 07. Superbad comes out in August 07. You're now a star. And like, so they put it together and they obviously knew it wasn't me. And like, but like, I just felt this like pride of living there. And now I look back on that and I throw up in my mouth.
It's probably because I started working in motion pictures before I moved to LA. So I had that, you'd go to like a party and you tell people you work in movies and they were like, awesome. And the more I would tell people that, the more I felt like I was just lying to them. Even though they felt like it was awesome, I felt like their feelings about me being awesome working in movies was invalid, because when I was working in movies, it was not awesome, right? It was 15-hour days. I had no life. And this is if I was ever lucky to get out of the house and do anything. So I think it's like outside appearances, it seemed like my life was really cool and interesting. And maybe if I was like focusing on that aspect, like it was cool to meet like certain celebrities or, see the props or the sets being built, like that stuff was really cool. But at the same time, I wasn't really enjoying it. So it was hard work and it wasn't really what I expected. And then when I moved to LA to work in movies, I certainly did not feel like, it's awesome to work in Hollywood on movies, because at that point, I didn't really think it was that awesome to work on movies. Like, it's work, I mean, it is cool, but it's work. It's just like any job. And it's the work I was doing was backbreaking work as well. So, and I didn't have a life outside of it. I emphasize that all the time. Like, I think there's, work-life balance is non-existent. It was just my life. That's all I did. And if I wasn't working, I was in a panic looking for work. So rat race is the word I use all the time. I hate to use it because it feels like it's overused. And but it really is the best way to explain to people what it's like working in LA.
And before I ask you a couple questions about working in motion pictures before moving to Hollywood, and I know this, but I want to give the audience a little bit of background. What is your background in film and video? Can you give us a quick rundown?
Sure. So I started out as a video producer of like live events and music videos. I started out in Philadelphia, actually, and I really enjoyed that. But the business that I had built with my business partner didn't really work out. So afterwards, I was fortunate enough to have a couple of contacts that were working on some of M. Night Shyamalan's movies, because he always shoots in and around Philadelphia. And the location manager that does all of the work for him got in touch with me because they were shooting a movie here in Pittsburgh, where I'm from. And this was probably 2008. And they had just really started doing tax breaks. And Pennsylvania was one of the first states to offer like insane tax breaks to productions to move their sets basically to Pennsylvania, and Pittsburgh became an attractive place. But the problem was there wasn't a lot of infrastructure there to support these films, and there weren't there was even less people with experience that knew the area. So when this location manager was going to Pittsburgh, and the location manager knew Pittsburgh because he went to Point Park University here. He brought me on simply because I was from Pittsburgh and I knew somebody that had worked with him already. So that was pretty much it. Like that was pretty much the reason I got into movies at all, is because I knew I had a small inkling of familiarity with Pittsburgh. And there was a whole bunch of people from LA that were about to descend onto Pittsburgh and needed to know how to get around. And let me tell you, growing up in Pittsburgh, I didn't get my license until I was 17, and I moved out of Pittsburgh when I was 18. So I actually didn't have a lot of experience driving around and exploring Pittsburgh as a city. So again, going into locations for Pittsburgh, like to basically tell people how to get around, I was as clueless as most people were. Actually, I knew some things, like I just knew how to get across the Fort Pitt Bridge, which is extremely handy if you want to come out of it with your life and your balls intact. But like that was pretty much it. Like I didn't really know, so I kind of faked it a little bit. And I did the same thing when I went to LA. When I moved to LA, I was still working in locations and doing locations work for movies and commercials. And I didn't know anything. Like it was so weird to get my first job on the set of a movie in Los Angeles, in locations of all things, where I didn't know anything about LA. I had no clue. My brother had moved there many years before me, so I had visited, but I didn't know any. I didn't understand like the union radius and like I didn't know any of this stuff, right? Like so I had to learn it as I go, and I especially had to learn how permits worked in LA and all of that stuff. And
which is a nightmare, which is an absolute nightmare. Film
yes,
LA is insane. It is the biggest highway robbery out there, or at least it was when I was there.
And the thing that I really had to get used to in LA is that if you say anything about doing a show, no matter who you're talking to, you can be talking to a janitor. Their eyes will go dollar signs like in the cartoons, right? Like everybody knows, from corporate entities down to just like somebody begging for money on the street. Everybody knows that this is where the money is going. Like cash flows from the studio system. And so I couldn't get a parking lot for like under like $2,000 a day, right? It was just insane to me, the prices to just shoot. And I'm sure it's even higher nowadays. I think at one point we paid $10,000 for a parking lot to shoot one day in Hollywood. That was the highest number I ever saw. And that's a parking lot. That's just literally to stage extras or to put like tables for people to sit and eat for catering. Like I'm not talking about actually parking vehicles in it. I'm talking about just being able to just use the space. And if you ever get a chance to visit LA, just take in just how much the sprawl is just unbelievable, right? Like the urban sprawl is unlike anything you've ever seen in your life. And it looks nothing like you've ever actually, like your two eyes are seeing a city you've actually never seen before, despite seeing this place thousands of times, whether it was portrayed as LA or not. You saw this place thousands of times on screen in front of you through various different stories being told. And the actual physical place you're looking at is a brand new place. And that was kind of what was amazing to me, because I feel like the first time I went to New York City, I was like, yep, this is New York, as I have always been advertised it would be, right?
Home Alone 2. Home Alone 2.
Yes, I am running from the sticky bandits. I'm King Kong is on the Empire State Building. I'm seeing everything that has been depicted, even the grittiness or the glam of New York. Like both sides of it are there. Like they're all like within your view. You go to LA and it's like you can't look at LA in just like one panoramic. It's just too big. And you just aren't prepared for how diverse the landscape is too. I think like that's what threw me. I was like, oh, this is why they make movies here. This is like 30,000 different places in one place.
And that's the thing too. it's like 30,000 different small cities that make up one. And that just makes it so unique. And it's like what I talked about earlier in the episode of it being, to me, like LA is filled with Muppets. It's not just the people, but it's also the personality of the city and the depth of the city. I remember, I mean, there was many, many times I flew in. I mean, God, my whole career, I was back and forth between New York and LA and even the East Coast and Pittsburgh visiting family. Nothing felt more amazing than landing at LAX. Now, getting out and dealing with LAX and sitting on the runway for an hour and a half was never fun, but just that descent into LA was just because it's huge and it's so vast and so unique. And you're right, and it makes a lot of sense why they showed up there and turned that into the entertainment capital of the world, because you could go 5 miles outside of downtown Los Angeles and you're in cowboy country. I mean, really, horses walking down the road. It's wild. And I think that was Norco or somewhere, Norco, California. They have like sidewalks where people are actually riding horses. And I just always found it so interesting. And I feel like, and this is my question for you, you were there for 8 years, you said, right? You were in LA for 8 years. Okay. So half the time I was there, I feel like I was there for 16, and I feel like I was so focused on just getting my shit accomplished in doing stuff that I never really stepped back and looked at LA as like this is a pretty wild place. Like I mean, I saw it as a wild place, but I never really appreciated it for what it was. And I think now as I look back on my time there and I say, oh, FLA, I don't need to go back there, blah, blah, blah. I really do miss a lot of it. And as much as I enjoy living in Pittsburgh, I really miss living in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I think so. I stopped working in movies when I was in LA and commercials. I slowly kind of faded out. Combination of two things. One, I was burnt out. Two, the work started to dry up a lot while I was there, and it became harder and harder for me. And I started to distance myself a lot from people that were working in the industry. And that's another aspect that I always want to bring up is I feel like when I talk about LA and when people ask me about LA, they're curious about my experience working in the entertainment industry. But I wore a lot of different hats after I left working in entertainment. I did stand-up comedy for many years. Clearly, I'm very, very funny. I was a teacher. I was a barista at a cafe as like a rite of passage sort of thing. I did a lot of writing. I wrote like award-winning short film. I was a background actor, which is like, if you're unemployed for any or underemployed for any amount of time in LA, you end up becoming a background actor for any amount of time. And that was just me just like trying to find money. It wasn't because I wanted to get back into the industry.
Oh, background acting, central casting changed my career.
Yeah, central casting is I used to love getting the text messages from them, and then they would just like send me like a message, and then I just like respond yes or no. I do miss those days where I would just like do a day on like a game show or something.
And that is that's the one nice thing about Los Angeles. And you said this, you can work many different jobs, whether if they're in the industry or not. And at the end of the day, you really, if you are struggling to find rent or to pay your car bill, if you put enough effort into it, you could get that money in a week. And that's something you can't do in Pittsburgh because, again, there's not the opportunities. People aren't paying you to sit in an audience. People aren't paying you to go on a game show. They're not paying you to look like Jonah Hill for 2 days. And, it's a very wild place because of that.
There's kind of these fun things you can do that you can't do in other cities if you're living there. And, but I think what I'm saying is that a lot of times, a lot of what I have to say about my experience there revolves around the industry, even though a huge portion of my time there wasn't actually involved in the industry at all. And I was actually interacting. The best friends I've made in LA are a mix of people that are trying to make it right in the industry, and people that are just from there and live there and work there, right? Like that are just Angelenos, and they're just like down to earth, regular people that aren't really at all chasing some insane dream and starving themselves to try to reach the top. Instead, they're just like, no, I just want to do this thing. Like I knew this guy who just like wanted to be a CPA, right? It's just like, and I was like, you're like the coolest, most laid back CPA anyone's ever like met in their life. Like I would have never guessed this guy wanted to be an accountant. But like I think you kind of get that in LA is like there's this other side to it that most people end up not talking about, where it is just a place. It is just like any other city, and it's full of a ton of down to earth people that aren't actually in the rat race and are super cool and are just actually just trying to like build community, which is extremely difficult to do in LA as well because of, well, people like me who show up for less than a decade and then leave. So but most people do it even for less than that.
They
And
really
so it's
do.
difficult to cultivate that sort of like that feeling where it's like this is a tight knit group of people that are trying to build something together.
Yeah, and I was very fortunate. I mean, for the 16 years I was there, I had a very tight-knit group. And, my own actions and mistakes lost that group. My own choices decided to not go back to that group. However, you do make a good point. People are there for a very short amount of time. Now, 16 years is a long time. 8 years is a long time. I think the average is usually around 4 or 5. And I think usually that is because when you're approaching your 30s or you're in your 30s, you start to reevaluate things. And I think if I go back 10 years ago, I'm 42 right now. If I go back to when I was 32 and I was getting married at the time, obviously that didn't work out. But my career was working out. But I think if I was a couple years behind in my career, I probably would have jumped ship sooner. But instead, I was so invested on making that the rest of my life. I'm still surprised that I'm not sitting in Los Angeles right now doing this podcast. Like it blows my mind that the last podcast I did was in my house in Inglewood. So
it's interesting you say 4 or 5 years because that was my original plan.
Oh, okay.
4 to 5 years, and then I would reevaluate. Like, should I still be here? Should I continue to do this? And it was after that first 5 years that I had left the entertainment industry. I was probably at that point working as a barista, right? Like making the smallest amount of money I've ever made in my life at that point. And paying the most amount of rent I'd ever paid in my life at that point. And you'd think at that point you'd say, oh, let's call it quits. But LA is this incredible place where you have these nights where you think, this is where I'm supposed to be. You feel like there are these times where the stars are aligning for you or something. Like it's sort of like almost tricks you into thinking that this is the place where you're supposed to be. Like this is fate, this is destiny. And I think that feeling happened more often than it probably should have for me because one, I knew people from the entertainment industry. So I would still end up getting invited to things like rap parties, right? Where there'd be like celebrities there. And I was in stand-up comedy. I was part of like that like open mic ring, but I would also do nights at like the Comedy Store or the Improv. And those nights were surreal because I'm not a great stand-up comedian, but I'm a stand-up comedian fan, right? Like, so I love to consume stand-up comedy. So to go to these clubs and to basically be like right next to some of like the people that, you watched growing up or even to have a conversation with them or for them to just treat you in any way like an equal, you're suddenly like 1,000 feet up in the air, right? Like you feel like a different like entity, really. Like you really don't feel like that this is your life you're living. And you come back from that night, you wake up the next day, you go to your job where you're not getting paid a lot of money, but it just doesn't matter. And you can ride that wave for pretty long before the whole world shuts down due to COVID and you say, okay, actually I should probably wake up and do something with my life that isn't what I've been doing. So I got right up to the point with stand-up comedy where I could have pursued it as a career, but I never wanted to do stand-up as a career. It was always a hobby for me, which enraged a lot of other stand-up comedians, I think.
Well, I'm actually starting to gather that kind of like your whole presence in LA, even being like, I'm giving myself 5 years and reevaluating. That if I would have heard that when we were there at the same time and we didn't know each other, it would have enraged me because and now I look at it though as I'm so envious that you had that. I'm so envious that you were doing things for yourself versus where yourself thought you needed to be in 10, 15, 20 years. Who's your number one person that you interacted with? Not just someone that you were on set with, but someone you really had an interaction with and really stayed with you. Um, and again, if you told this story about me, no one would give a shit.
Sure. The so the strongest interaction I ever had with any celebrity was Jeff Fahey. Um, and if anybody doesn't know that name, it's not the most famous guy in Hollywood, but he was the Lawnmower Man for you '90s kids. But later he would end up in gosh, what was the name of those movies that Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez did? Death.
The Grindhouse movies.
Grindhouse movies.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. So that was like, I worked on a small micro budget horror film, and he was kind of like the main star of it, or one of the main characters of the film. I'll be honest, I never saw that film either. I don't think I've seen most of the films I've worked on. I'll be honest. Pretty terrible movie. We won't talk about the film. It was actually really funny. I remember the director. I was sitting around a table with the director and the DP, and he was literally like, when are we going to be done with this shit and move on? Like bad mouthing the movie to the DP, and the DP basically agreeing with him. And I was just like, what you guys made this thing? Like, what are you?
That's so funny. I mean, that goes back to what I said earlier in the podcast where, Randy Barbado was just like, oh, we make a lot of crap, but we got to pay the bills. And I'm like, you're saying that right in front of the person we're about to interview. Your co-founders there. Like, but again, it is a job. And you said this at the beginning. It is just a job.
Yeah, so with a smaller movie like that, the crew isn't very big, and I was pretty much completely like the location manager bailed on the movie like before it had started production. So I became the sort of scab location manager because I wasn't in a union. I was just a PA. So I basically got like bumped up, but not actually bumped up, right? Like they were just like, well, this guy got all the permits. That's his job's basically done, right? Right? Like, so I just became like the main sort of liaison between like location proprietors and production. So what's fun about this story is this is a story that Jeff Fahey told me about a story that was told to him.
That's also very Hollywood.
So again, the reason I bring up all this context is because this is a rare instance where I was able to spend a long amount of time with Jeff, because we were shooting on a movie ranch and it was really hot that day, and they had a airplane hangar on this ranch, and I convinced the owner of the ranch to let us use the hangar as just like holding.
Yeah.
So we didn't have any extras, but it was just like a place that was shaded and wasn't in the heat. And this is like the middle of the summer. It was brutally hot. And so he let us use it for free. So as a result of that, I had this like space that I was sort of like able to get people in from out of the heat. And when the actors aren't, on set, they're usually in their trailer, but the trailers were kind of far at this movie ranch. So he popped into the hangar with me, and everybody else was on set. So it was just the two of us in this hangar together sitting at a table. So you can imagine this giant airplane hangar, a couple of folding chairs and a card table, and Jeff Fahey and I just sitting there together, just talking. And we're talking about a number of things at this point. And I'm like looking at the time, like, should I be doing something else? Like not just talking to the talent, And I had talked about some of like my goals and how, my background as like a video editor and a producer, and at the time I was writing stuff. I had written a couple short films. I was trying to work on put together a web series at that point in time. So I was trying to do creative stuff for the first time in a really, really long time. It would be years before any of that stuff got off the ground, but I was working on stuff. And Jeff said to me, he goes, "Look, listen, let me tell you a story." One day I get a phone call out of the blue, and it's this guy on the other side of the line. He said, "Hey Jeff, you don't know me, but many, many years ago, you were at a Oscar after party with Nick Nolte, and a kid snuck in to the after party and got to your table and introduced himself." And Jeff said, "Yes, I remember. I remember you. You came in. You pretended as if you were a journalist or something, and to get in." and you were and he was very honest about why he came in. It was pretty much just to meet people in the industry, and that he was aspiring to be a filmmaker. And the guy on the other side of the line said, Jeff, you welcomed me to the table. You said, hey, come sit with Nick Nolte and I, and hang out with us. And he said it changed my life. It was the nicest thing anyone has ever done for me in this industry. And then he said, Jeff, my name's Robert Rodriguez. I want to put you in my next movie. And that movie was Grindhouse.
That is incredible.
Yeah. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like listening to this story. And again, this is a story that he told me from a phone call. Like, I am 99% certain this is apocryphal, right? Like, I'm like, even while he's telling it, I'm like, this is such a Hollywood story. Like, he's changing names, events, like Nick Nolte, like it's Nick Nolte this week. Who was it last week? Right? Like
Burt Reynolds.
Yeah. Like it just, that name changed with the times probably, as he's told this story over and over again. Not that the story sounded rehearsed. It didn't. But it felt like he's told this story before. So, he's telling me this story and about how he basically wound up in Grindhouse. And for those that don't know, like, Jeff Fahey didn't work for a long time. Like, him getting in Grindhouse was a big deal for his career. It kind of put him back on the tip of everyone's tongue in Hollywood, right? Like, it kind of made them say, oh, Jeff Fahey's a name. And, we're alone in this hangar, and he looks at me and he says, Joe, what, do you know what the meaning of that story is that I just told you? And I said, no, I don't, Jeff. And he goes, the moral of the story is that one day, after you've worked really, really hard and you become a successful movie producer or director, and he looks me right in the eyes and he says, hire me.
That is incredible.
And that's the message he was trying to send me.
Yes.
And this man is just from that story, what he learned is to plant seeds.
Yeah, and he's completely right too, because I mean, if you think about it, I mean, how many actors or people in Hollywood have completely disappeared but have come back because of the seed planting? And it's also that thing too, whatever fabrication the story took on, everyone starts somewhere. I remember when Eli Roth was an intern on the Howard Stern show. I mean, this is all, and I mean, John Krasinski, intern on Conan, like people, I mean, even you go far back as Cameron Crowe, just a writer pretending to, fit in places with bands. It's really interesting to hear that story, and I really like that. I'm actually going to fact check that. We'll keep it in whether it's true or not. But what an incredible story!
I've never
for you.
Fact checked.
Yeah. What an incredible story for you to have, though, as yourself, because whether if it's true or not, it reminds me a lot of these stories that I've been telling on this podcast, and what I told the whole first half before you came on. I couldn't tell you if these. I couldn't tell you if Adam Sandler said this or said that, but he said something to me, and whatever it is, it's what it is now, and whatever it is next year is what it will be. But I have these stories that are true, but they're so Hollywood and they're so rich and they're so interesting because they're with someone that like I can care less about Nick Nolte, but I care about the story whenever some guy's going in to sit with him. And it's just great. And
isn't it great? Because he name drops in the story. Like,
yes.
I love that. I love that detail. Like, he name drops within the story. Like, this is a story about Robert Rodriguez calling him, and he's Jeff Fahey, right? Like, I mean, he still name drops.
No, you got to.
Like, why? Like, it's so perfect in that sense, where it's just like, you don't need to tell me who you're sitting at a table with. Like, I don't need to know that. But it's an element of every Hollywood story that like sort of legitimizes it and makes you go, oh, I'm listening now, because you said a name of somebody that I know. I like that story because it reminds me, even at the time, it reminded me of this, but it constantly reminds me that like you're on a journey, right? And that you're not on a journey towards a destination necessarily, right? And that in the story, like whether it was directed at me or not, I look at it from his perspective and what he was trying to do, even for himself, even in a self-serving way. He was looking at his entire like trajectory in his career, going from being at an Oscars party to sitting in an airplane hangar, one person away from walking away from him, being completely alone in an airplane hangar in the middle of the desert, right? Like the fact that I was sitting there listening to him, you know what I mean, was part of his journey too. And he got a chance to tell that story again, plant that seed, and that maybe, one day I would become that. And there were times where I've looked back on that story and I'm like, I kind of failed him. I left the industry, like I left that ladder. But now here I am, I'm making movies, I'm making my own projects, and I don't really have dreams and aspirations of becoming a Hollywood anything nowadays. But at the same time, I'm reminded that I'm still on a journey and that I should still be working towards something, even if that destination isn't going to be reached, right? Like that's not the point of being on the journey, right? It's to enjoy it. It's to pass on things to more people. And whether they're younger than you or older than you or whatever it might be. So like for me, that story has meaning. And when I tell it, it's funny, but it's also, it's sort of like, it sort of encapsulates the entire like Hollywood experience for me in a nutshell, in terms of like why I was there in the first place and why I left.
Wow, jeez. Wow, Joe, that was incredible. And I think anyone who is listening that is considering moving to Hollywood, whether if you're 22 or 82, take that advice, because it's a journey, and it's a windy, long journey, whether if you're there for 8 years, 16 years, or 3 years, because it's an interesting place filled with interesting people and interesting activities, and Nick Nolte. It's just wild. Joe, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and chatting with me a little bit. This was really fun. Your story and your time in Los Angeles is very unique to me, because it's the best word I can use is calm. And you seem like you had more of a plan than I ever had, hence even how I ended up back here in Pittsburgh, just abruptly. But I wanted to just wish you all the best in Pittsburgh. And I know we're going to be working on some stuff together and doing some things as the years go on. And I really appreciate you coming on and being our inaugural guest. Hopefully we keep doing this. Hopefully we haven't lost any viewers, but I don't think you would have done that. Maybe my microphone not being plugged in earlier in the episode. However, I do ask this, Joe. If and when the wind takes you to another city or far, far away from Pittsburgh, just give me a ring before you go, because I just want to hang out one last time, because you just seem like a guy who is so chill when it comes to just what is going to happen next, that I envy that so much, because I'm the guy that's like, well, where am I going to be in 10 years? And you're a lot like my girlfriend, Megan. She's like, who knows where we'll be? Who knows where I'll be in a minute? And I love that about you. And I value that. And I think that more people need to go to Los Angeles and Hollywood with that mindset.
Yeah, I definitely will. I appreciate that. And in the spirit of, formerly living in Los Angeles, we will schedule that final goodbye, and I'll bail at the last minute.
All right, Joe, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about your time in Los Angeles. We hope to have you back here again on Just Steve. See you soon.